trying to framing us stealing American jobs. That is very not true. We are really providing jobs for millions of US in the services sectors. I just would like to emphasize that this kind of long relationship with China should not be viewed that ASEAN's pro-China. ASEAN always try to strike a balance between these two major countries.
As the United States and China show no signs of backing down from their trade war, Southeast Asian nations are finding themselves stuck in the crossfire. As major manufacturing hubs, they must now try to keep two warring giants happy. But can they play both sides? To find out, I'm joined by Lili Yan Ing from the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Ing. I want to begin by asking you about Trump's initial tariffs, which hit some Southeast Asian nations really hard. 32%, for example, for Indonesia, where you're based. How much of a shock was this for the region?
Quite a shock for the regions, but I think like the country that most hit by the tariff is US itself. And ASEAN's, the 10 ASEAN countries grouped as ASEANs, we firmly asserts that Trump's tariff attack is unjustified and it will be detrimental for the global economy. So we make a very stance points that ASEANs will not gonna resort to any confrontations, but indeed we're gonna take any forward-looking strategy that include deepening intra-ASEANs and East ASEAN's trade and investments. We also going to expand our partners, not only with the US, but also with Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, and other countries in the world.
Okay, so you're looking to diversify, but at the same time, you also have less than 90 days to persuade the United States not to reinstate these tariffs. What message are ASEAN nations sending Washington right now? And are they speaking with one voice?
Well, I think like on the 10th of April, the 10 ASEAN countries agreed to adopt ASEAN's economic ministerial statements. In that statement, we clearly voices at least three core principles. One is that ASEAN supports the free, transparent, predictable, inclusive, sustainable multilateral trading systems with the WTO at its core. The second one is that ASEANs maintain positive engagements with our key trading and investments partners. And the third one is that we open any potential engagements with any countries in the world grounded on mutual respect and for the beneficial for all countries involved.
You mentioned the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and its importance for ASEAN. But at the moment, as an institution, it's really not functioning anymore, is it? It doesn't have any dispute resolution mechanism. How do you see its role at the moment? Is it able to do anything?
Well, currently, some of the countries like EU, for example, Australia, Japan, Singapore, they have initiated the multi-party agreements that basically kind of the temporary resolutions to replace, not really to replace, but at least to have the dispute settlement body functioning. Because as we know, by December 2019, the US literally blocked, it was during Trump's first administrations, the US blocked the appointment of dispute settlement body member, that resulting that dispute settlement body is not functioning. But other than that, I think the WTO in terms of agreement in trade, in investments facilitations and other roles are still functioning well. And that's one of the reasons I think all countries should be very firm in terms of assert our confirmations or our standing to ensure that the multilateral trading systems is functioning with the core of the WTO.
We have China appointing a trade negotiator who has a wealth of experience at the WTO. How significant do you think that is?
Yes, I think we can see that the Chinese move to appointing Li Jianqing, which used to be for the WTO, I think it's a good move to show that China is ready for the nitty-gritty of the trade negotiations. So I hope that this will be responded positively. And as we'll know that currently China is also like China's visits to a couple of Southeast Asian countries, including Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, show how much China wants to strengthen its trade, investments, infrastructure cooperations with Southeast Asian countries.
Yeah, I think that is very interesting. And I'd love your take on how you think Xi Jinping has been received in these countries, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Malaysia.
I think all ASEAN countries have been um, positively responded to President Xi Jinping visits. Like just to give a bit of backgrounds for all of you, ASEAN's established in 1967. We always keep ourselves as a neutral partners for all to all countries, and we're gonna keep that positions. We has never and will never take any sides. And it was along the way of our developments. It was China the first time who introduced a partnership or asked to have a partnership with China. It was established in 2010. And since then, we have other FTAs with Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and India. And recently, in November 2019, we have concluded the RCEP, which consists of the 10 ASEAN countries plus five main trading partners. So I just would like to emphasize that this kind of long relationship with China should not be viewed that ASEAN's pro-China. In fact, at the same time, ASEAN also positively or actively engage with the US in the ASEAN-US Trade Investments Framework Agreement or TIFA. And recently, we also have a work plan on digital and technology. So I think like ASEAN always try to strike a balance between these two major countries, and in fact, ASEAN is always open to have positive engagements, including with the EU.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit more about the EU later, but I want to go back to this point you're making that ASEAN has no intention of picking a side here. But aren't they somehow being coerced to do just that by both sides at the moment?
Indeed, we have always been put in the corner and we have always been somehow asked to kind of making statements or making movement to choose. But I think like just to give you an illustrations, I have been involved in the RCEP negotiations. Never ever in the RCEP negotiations we discuss on how to contain the U.S. economy or how to try to reduce the U.S. economic power. Not at all, not at all. I mean, like it was purely economic trade and investments partnerships. And we, Southeast Asia, want the US to grow. We want the American people to prosper. I mean, looking at these 50 years of economic cooperations between ASEAN and the US, I think we both bring mutual benefits to all countries involved. I mean, look at the US now. Back to 1970s, right? The US or average American people income was only 7,000, but now American people income is 86,000 US dollar. And part of it because of ASEAN's contribute the US. We provide high quality, competitive price inputs. We provide very solid supply chains. We support American strategic industries. And just for everyone's information who are supporting Trump, I think ASEAN has never against US businesses or American people. What we do not agree is Trump's destructive tariff policy. And we all know that the US is running trade deficits in goods. But if we take into account trade in services in 2024, U.S. exports of services reached the high of 1 trillion US dollar. 32% of that was absorbed by Southeast Asian countries. ASEAN countries absorbed about 330 billion of US exports in services. And ASEAN's and services sectors contribute 81% of the current US economy. So, I mean, partnership with ASEAN's really has brought the US economy to get stronger and prosper. And this is something that we are very disappointed with the US, to be precise, to Trump's tariff policy, thinking that or trying to framing us stealing American jobs. That is very not true. We are really providing jobs for millions of US in the services sectors. We are contributing to the growth of America. We contribute significantly to the risings of American people income per capita. So we really value this kind of long-term partnerships with the US as well as we value with other countries.
I'm so glad that you brought up the distinction between goods and services, because I think this is also often lost in the narrative. Why do you think we're constantly only talking about goods in this context?
Well, I think it's simply because of Trump ignorant policy. So that's why we always emphasize we do not against American businesses or American people. I think Trump is just trying to framing such that just taking into account trade in goods. In fact, the US has always recorded trade in services surpluses all over the years. And Southeast Asia and East Asia are among countries who absorbs significantly of their trade in services. And moreover, if we take into account military equipment, military services, the US has always recorded trade surpluses, right? And just to give you any simple illustrations, not only beyond trade in services, in beyond military. For example, Indonesia is the largest Indonesia recorded the largest transactions in Boeing. In 2012, Indonesia bought 22 billion of Boeing just for Indonesia alone. And considering the growing of traveling in Southeast Asia, the value will be increasing. And this is something that the US, or to be precise, Trump didn't take into account. So it's really hurting the US economy because of Trump's ignorance on other issues.
When ASEAN as a trading bloc comes together to consider their response to these tariffs, what kind of leverage does it have? Because it sounds like from what you're saying that in the services sector, you do actually have a little bit of bargaining power. How might such a response look?
Well, this is the case. I mean, since the beginning, Trump has always framing its policy focusing on trade in goods and trying to make this kind of narrative, trying to get the votes. But indeed, the issue with the US economy are three things. First is the rising of debt. Currently, US has recorded 119% of federal debt to GDP and 143% of private debt to GDP. The second one is US fiscal deficits. The US now is recording 5.6% of fiscal deficits to GDP, right? And the second one is persistent inequality. These three issues will not gonna be able to solve by tariff. So what the voters or Trump supporters have to realize is that they should ask for more inclusive income distribution systems, because actually the US now is the largest economy, right? It's the first largest economy, 28 trillion US dollar. So there must be something wrong with the income distributions. And this is a public secret. This is some things that American people should fight for, that America should tax to also increase income tax as well as wealth tax and make the distributions improve welfare for all people, create jobs for American peoples that they are actually needs.
Dr. And I have a final question for you. You talked about diversification and you mentioned the EU. Have you been talking to EU members about forging closer ties?
That's a very good point indeed. I mean, ASEAN and EU actually has started ASEAN EU Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreements in 2007, but then it was postponed because of the slow progress. It was postponed in 2009. I think this kind of lessons that we can learn from Trump tariff attack is that it's very important for us to diversify trade and investments partners. And we both are equally important in the global economy, right? So I think it's very important for ASEAN and EU to reactivate and getting close to the conclusions of ASEAN's EU SEPA. I may uh, honestly broad this issue. Actually, there are three key issues that we should consider for conclusions. First is on the market access for ASEAN. So this kind of technical standard that EU implement is too high for ASEAN's products. I'm not asking to delay, but what I'm suggesting is that giving ASEAN's countries some time to adjust for technical standards. The second one is for labor mobility and mutual recognition agreement for labor mobility. EU is now facing declining populations, aging populations, even like Greece, Poland, Hungary have been declining populations, right? So ASEAN's, with our growing populations, with a majority of labor force in the age of labor force, so actually this kind of complementary. So we need to work on how to smoothen the movement of labor force to help the European economy to grow. The third one is, as we all know, is the issue on sustainability. You know, the major exported products for Indonesia, Malaysia, and other ASEAN countries are including palm oil. Something that we can learn, Indonesia concluded Indonesia EFTA, in which includes Swiss. So we can probably learn on how certifications process from Indonesia EFTA. So this is like three issues that I think require ministerial and leaders level decisions. If we let technical staff to continue discussions, it will just be on and on and on without any decisions. So these three issues require political decisions, and I do believe EU will respect ASEAN's diversity and development gaps to be able to conclude this ASEAN-EU SEPA.
And there's certainly more urgency for that now. Lili Yan Ing, thank you so much. It's been a fascinating discussion.
Thank you for having me.